What kind of took you from that to go, you know what? I could do this for influential people. I can help influential people. I can connect influential people. Like, what was that evolution like?
Um, Blind, I think, is the easy answer to that, because I had gone from riding around on a motorcycle to working on the door as a pub thug. You know, I was that guy, but I looked a certain way, but I wanted something else. And I went from the kind of like, hey, I can get your car cleaned, to, hey, I know there's a private party going on in the back, I'll get you in. I always knew that I had to bring value to you to get your attention. Okay, I always knew that. And I couldn't do it through funny jokes because I wasn't funny. I couldn't do it through great quotes because I didn't know quotes at the time. I had no intelligence. And I wanted to be able to grab your attention by giving you what you needed. Now, here was the funny thing. I had this primitive idea, and bearing in mind, I met my wife when I was 17, she was 16. So we've been together forever. And I used to say to her, hey, I'm in the wrong sandpit. And I always used to say this, I know the wrong people. They can't help me. Hey, if I'm at a pub fight, they're great. If I want my bank balance to be increased, if I want a legacy, if I want a future, they're not the people. The people that can get you here aren't always the people that can get you there. Classic Cameron Harold. So I knew I needed to get a different sandpit of people that thought, acted, and disrupted differently. And I said to Claire, if I can get into that sandpit, they will give me a job. They will see the value that I have. They will see my attention to detail. They will see my motivation. They will see that I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do what's necessary and go home at 12 o'clock at night when the job's done, not just because the day's done. And I thought, if they can see that, I'm going to get a job. So for many years, while building up this network, I was actually misfocused on the fact that I would get a job from them. And during this time, I was working with Formula One at Ferrari. I was working with the largest jewellery firm in England. I was working with the New York Fashion Week. I had all of these major organizations and heads of these companies that were getting me these contracts. I was working for them. I was getting paid. I was living in a penthouse, still thinking that one day they're going to give me the job. And it was my wife that one day turned around and went, you don't realize you already have a job. You've created your own job. Right. And I was like, shit, yeah, I have. Now, like all entrepreneurs, when everything goes well, what do? We fuck it up. We find a way to screw it up. And I did. And for the next year, I spent kind of like destroying what I had, and the beautiful, almost naivety of what I had, and try to make it corporate. I remember people saying to me, You can't have tattoos and a black T-shirt. You can't turn up to billionaires on motorbikes. You can't look like you do. You got to cover your tats, get rid of your piercings. You know, no one will take you seriously. Bear in mind, for 8 years, that's all I did was turn up on a motorbike, threw the crash helmet on the desk, and was like, "Hey, Johnny, how can we help you?" And he just happened to own something like a country. You know, I was already doing that, but of course, that doubt gets in all of us. And it got to me, and I spent a year kind of like losing everything I had and then gaining it back again. So thankfully, I did it in like a 10-month period. But it was Claire that actually pointed out I had that job. And then I realized it was a Trojan horse. I didn't want to be, and we ended up being called the concierge to the most influential people in the planet. Forbes called me the real-life Wizard of Oz. Right. You know, I got accolades. I was well known as hanging around with Elon Musk and Bocelli and the Pope. And, you know, hey, that's great. You know, I'm not dissing that. But that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to have a conversation with someone that owned the largest print press in I don't know, New York. And I'd go, hey, how do you control, or how do you communicate, or how do you build a community? I wanted to speak to people that were powerful and go, hey, how do you see opportunities? How do you take on partners? How do you delegate? Delegation is probably the hardest thing all entrepreneurs have. How do you delegate? How do we trust in a cynical world? How do we trust? And I wanted to have those conversations. My vehicle was the concierge firm. And thankfully I sold it, I don't know, when my first book came out, Bluefishing, about 8 years ago. Still part of it, but I realized that the Trojan horse was I would come in. If you, as a very powerful person, wanted to be backstage hanging out with Taylor Swift or on stage with the rock band Journey or playing drums with Guns N' Roses, hey, I'll do that. But can we have dinner? Now, of course, I would always charge my clients, so financially it was working well because, again, great believer, second nugget, if they don't pay attention. I've never given anything away for free because if I give it away for free, what is the value? So pay or they don't pay attention. And I used to go, hey, you want to hang out with Guns N' Roses? I'll organise that. By the way, once we've done it, let's have dinner. And then I'd be like, hey, you own the largest Porsche dealership in Texas. How did you get your start? Why there? How do you handle awkward clients? How do you get new clients? How do you market? And I've been able to have these conversations with, quite simply, the most powerful people throughout the planet. Some of them you've never heard of, that own armies, that own businesses, that own countries, heads of countries. I've been able to sit down and literally have a hot dog in the back garden and go, how do you trust people when you're at this level? And that's where my growth's coming. Of course, now I coach, train, and speak all over the planet on that.